Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod with Richard Nilsson. Today with us, he is CEO at MyPetGo. Harvard educated, started a bunch of companies, living in Singapore, lived in Hong Kong too, just like myself. Beautiful place of the world there, and I am eager to visit Singapore as well. Cool guy altogether. We're going to talk about his past tennis career. I had a very short and shitty tennis career. I still love the sport. Don't play a paddle nowadays, which is amazing. And it's going to be a fun one. Podfire.com is sponsoring that one. That's my podcasting company. If you want to start your own podcast, scale it, and monetize it, you can go to podfire.com. Richard, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays.
Thank you, Charles, for having me. Always fun to meet like-minded people and to share anything if it makes sense to anybody else, or if anybody can get inspired or find a nugget that they can apply in some way in their own life. So look, born and bred in Sweden, sort of tried to become a tennis pro. Didn't really work out for me. I had a knee issue, but loved the game. Dabbled a bit in golf. And my golf coach always said, look, you know how to play tennis. You got to run to the ball, then you got to stop, then you got to hit. Here, you got the ball laying down. You just got to hit the ball, and still you can't really do it. So not so good in golf, a little bit better in tennis. At the age of 21, I sort of migrated to Hong Kong to start, to get into sort of technology. And this is sort of 2005, so post.com crash. And I saw with two other friends this opportunity to start a sort of luxury and lifestyle digital online first magazine, daily updated, with a community where people could congregate and talk about passions in life, be it motors, mechanical watches, fashion, beauty, wining and dining, travel, whatever sort of was or is their passion, and they could sort of share ideas, photos, conversations, etc., etc. We also had a city guide and an events guide, a little bit like a timeout, but very curated, more sort of targeting the yuppies and the early adopters in the Hong Kong market. Fast forward, we sort of launched that in Singapore. I moved then to launch it in Singapore, apply the same sort of thesis, build up readership across the magazine, sell different sort of ad solutions. When we started, we were trying to attract the Caring Group and the LVMH and the independents like Rolex and Patek, and everybody said, look, digital is not going to be something for us. We go in glossy print, we go billboards, that's what we do. And we tried so hard with Caring and with Gucci, which I don't think was owned by Caring at the time, but they said, look, we're never going to advertise digitally, so just stop pestering us with your phone calls and your media kits and whatnot. Towards the end, when we sold that business to a German conglomerate, Caring was our number one advertiser, and the number one within their sort of portfolio was Gucci. So we managed to convince them eventually. But yeah, so that's I guess a sort of quick intro to 35 years of my life, 40.
If I'd have to relaunch a D2C business, because my first nootropic, my first business was a nootropic supplement for the brain. I think I'd go in the luxury market. To be precise, I'm in Oaxaca right now, so it's the land of Mezcal here. I'd probably sell custom bottles of Mezcal with the finest quality of Mezcal, of course. Probably cost me like $6 per bottle, and I'd sell them at like 6,000 or something like that. What do you recommend that I do in terms of marketing? Should it be like full e-commerce? If it appeals to a luxury class of people, I'm not too into like physical events and stuff like that. So how should I market that?
Yeah, look, if you're gonna price it at 6,000 a bottle, I would do very personal in-person events. I think that really works, where you bring down the people that have a particular nose for tequila and mezcal and that type of spirit, and you curate a nice experience for them, and you have products that they can bring home, they can pay there, then and there, and they can bring them home with them. And so, you do that in a very nice atmosphere, yet somewhat intoxicated, right? And you play a little bit with guilt, and so you give them a nice experience, and you say you don't want anything in return, but they're going to feel a bit guilty, so they're going to pick up a bottle if obviously you've invited the right crowd that can spend that type of money. But look, I done a lot with luxury spirits, very, very fine products, and doing online advertisement. That's good maybe for building a brand in the awareness, but you're not going to sell 6,000 bottles of mezcal. I think it's going to be a hard sell. Even the craziest of Bitcoin guys that have 1,000 coins and no clue what to do with them wouldn't even go for that. I mean, even those guys would kind of hesitate, I think.
Right. Well, there would be a value of reselling these bottles, and they would be very unique, they would be made by a bot. Also, that's the controversial thing. Would be made according to the design that you want, right? And with your name and all of that, with AI actually. So AI would help in the design of that, and it would be a bot. So at the event, the bot could build their bottle and fill in the mezcal just right in front of them. Would be an elegant machine as well, like presentable to the public. But yeah, let's see about that one. Seems a bit complex. You're into pet tech, which is quite an interesting niche. Increase your pet's longevity. That's quite interesting. Tell me how you got that idea and why that market.
Right. So I'll go back to sort of the end of Lifestyle Asia before we sold that to this German conglomerate. We sort of realized that media was having a challenging time against the platform players, being Google, Facebook, Meta, obviously TikTok, and all the other guys, where everybody gave away their content for free, but obviously the users were there, and they were essentially data mining. They were extracting so much data, and they could sort of with a precision really start to eat up. I think at the time, 2016, 17, they were eating 90% of all the budget pies that were there for all media players, right? And that was how powerful they became. And so to me, it was, okay, look, we got this beautiful niche target audience, and we know where they live. We know roughly what income they have. We have these sexy data points, but we don't have the same type of data. And so I said to myself, I probably should leave this industry. Like, I made this exit, take the money, go do something else. And pet parent myself, love the space, started looking at what was going on in the US market, in Europe. And I said, look, I think there is a lot happening here. It's a highly analog industry still. And there is, if you look at the micro and the macro, you can see, one of the simple data points would be that majority of the pet owners today are millennials or Gen Z. And so these are data-driven people. They have an Aura Ring or a Whoop strap or an Apple Watch, if not a combination. They're looking at, their own sort of health data on a frequent basis. They do everything. They live on their smartphone. They do all their daily, weekly, monthly chores on their smartphone. It makes sense to do the pet chores as well on the smartphone. It makes sense to track the health of the pet as well and look at data points, because, hey, pets don't talk, right? So how do we give them a voice to explain how they're feeling physically and emotionally? And so we sort of said, look, how can we explain those parameters? How are they feeling physiologically, and how are they feeling sort of emotionally? And the way to do that is to leverage sensor data, extract those data points from predominantly an accelerometer, a gyroscope, and a few other sensors. And you take the X, Y, and Y values and you plug them into algorithms. And you would have to use either SEG or BCG or PPG to decide which scientific route you want to take. We've taken BCG, so ballistic cardiography, where we look at how the blood mass is shifting inside of the pet using various sensors. And then, but that's one part. Then you got to build the algos, and then you got to sort of validate that with medical equipment. So the idea was really to kind of give pets a voice of their own, and and ensure that caretakers can become more obedient and better caretakers for their pets.
Man, I see business genius behind that business. Are you raising funds this year?
We have been raising funds for this business since day one, pretty much. I mean, I'm the largest investor. So we are raising funds. We have been raising funds. And look, the issue with the pet tech sector, broadly speaking, is a lot of people, especially the venture capital guys, that don't quite get the sector. They've seen very little deal flow. They haven't seen any big successes apart from maybe Chewy and a couple of household names out there globally. So one of the reasons I'm actually not in Singapore at the moment, I'm in Barcelona. I've relocated. And the reason why I've relocated is that the market is different in Europe and US, and I needed to get out of the Asian time zone because I was having calls 2 in.the morning Singapore time and a 20-hour flight to New York, and so in Barcelona I got this great sort of ability to get out. But yes, we're raising money. We're looking at doing something with a very large strategic. I'm going to London on Monday, so let's see what happens. But I mean, there are other nuances to what we do, which I didn't dig in to, but I guess I can announce it here first, and that is that we've looked at the vitality model, which is across human health insurance. 25 years ago, there is this South African company called Discovery, and they launched a brand called Vitality. And this South African group is a conglomerate, so they're an insurer, they're a bank, they got their hands in many different industries and businesses. But what they launched with Vitality, I think, was very genius in that they went to Fitbit and bought a bunch of Fitbits, and then they went to the top tier segment of their maybe not top tier, but to a segment of their human health insurance customers and said, look, if you download this application and if you follow the chores that you need to do in your daily step count, in eating healthy and going for health screenings, and if you do this, we're going to give you a possible reduction of your premium up to 25% in your insurance. All you have to do is to take this Fitbit, wear it, pair the data with the application, and feed that data into the application. And so it's almost like you're incentivizing a person to become more obedient, to better look after themselves, and so that person will then require less intervention. And the data that they've managed to push out from that, having been around for 25 years, is astounding. 13 to 21 years longer lifespan, and 40% lower lapse rate for the insurance companies. So they've now taken this concept to 16 other insurance companies, and they're all over the world. They're in Japan with Sumitomo, they're in US with John, with Manulife, and in Spain with Generali, etc., etc. So we've also launched and built on top of what we have a similar thing we call longevity, and that is our longevity product. That is the same thing. The right amount of exercise, we're rewarding you for that, but not too much, and the right amount of sort of food, supplements, giving deworming tablets at the right time, going for your preventative health screenings, doing dental scaling, brushing the teeth daily, the right amount of sort of grooming and cleaning ears and cutting nails so the pets can grip better. And all of these things lead to a healthier pet that will require less intervention. So we're the first in the world to launch this, which we call longevity, and it's something that all the pet insurance companies we talked about this, they're very, very excited about this particular product. But it's the same thing. We're, instead of using Fitbit, we use our own monitors because we're the only one kind of doing health, wellness, and longevity at the moment.
What about the discipline aspect of it? What do you think of shock collars? Would there be a better feature to discipline your pet just to instead of making a noise or physically correcting them in the collar?
Look, I don't play in that arena of correctional collars or the containment arena where you're trying to contain the pet. Cesar Milan has partnered with a company that does that thing. It's a massive thing that sits around, and they give electroshocks, and they're trying to contain the pet. And while I think it might be necessary for certain breeds and so on and so forth, I think there are more humane ways to train a pet, and I don't think violence is the way to do it. I think and that's also part of what we're trying to do, is to educate you. So if you get a monitor early on in life, try to hold your hand through that journey as you progress through the journey of being a pet owner. And I think education is often the thing that lacks with, okay, you don't understand your pet, so your pet is behaving this way. There are better ways to get your pet to be obedient, and maybe you're not paying attention, maybe you're feeding the pet shit, maybe you're not feeding your pet at all, maybe you're not taking your pet for the right amount of exercise, right? Like if you got a husky, you got to exercise the pet, right? If you have like what I have, which is a Maltese, it's essentially a toy breed indoor dog that can get enough exercise walking inside, right? You don't need to take it out apart from poo poo and pee pee, right? Obviously, I do walk my dog. I'll just make that clear.
Yeah, it actually integrate the feature in there. It seems like a low-hanging fruit, not a shock, but like AI, which if the dog barks for some unwanted reason, right? Because there can be some wanted reasons. Well, you play a noise of the owner saying "a" or "ch" or "no."
Yeah.
And that could be interesting. And if the dog is behaving well, the AI could also release like pleasant smells, in the air, and good dog. That could be pretty nice as a feature.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, you can do a lot of things, right? Like the issue is you're gonna have to find a balance between the size of the monitor and the battery and the features, right? So the smaller the size of the monitor, the smaller the battery you can put inside, and the more features you want to have, the more things you're going to crank on. The more things you crank on inside, the more energy it's going to consume. So your issue is always to strike a balance, right? Our monitor is the size of like that, right, which is your earpod case, more or less. But we have the idea of bringing that down 35% while increasing battery life 50%. So in theory, that's a really, really hard thing to do. I think having a sound emitter is a simple thing to do, right? And you could probably program that in a way where the pet owner can talk into the application and record something, and then that could then be transferred into the hardware itself. It's all possible. I think it depends on price point. How much do you want to charge ultimately? I think the issue with a lot of wearables is that they're too expensive, right? So are you a data play or are you a hardware play? I'm a data play, right? We're a data business. We have no desire to try to be a hardware business. We have I'd love to be Apple, but to become Apple and be truly a hardware guy. I mean, you can argue that Apple is an ecosystem model, right? But they're very good at hardware. So is Samsung. But a lot of the other guys have lost out, right?
Right. But I don't think also it's rocket science to shape the color in a way that looks less cumbersome. This is probably like one of the versions. It could definitely be improved. I think the visuals are quite important for the owner because it's their pet, and their health, and they're like, oh, is this shit gonna explode on my dog's neck? Is it impermeable? And stuff like that, or will my dog hate it, like, does it look cumbersome? Because us humans, we really much project ourselves in the dogs, right? Like me, when I look at my first right now, my dogs don't have any collar. They really do, because I just picture myself with a dog at a collar, and it's like, oh shit, it's not, mustn't be super comfortable. But other than that, I'm super bullish on the startup. I'm actually curious about the science behind what you're monitoring. So let's say that the heartbeat is irregular, then my pet is at a risk of having a heart attack and I need to take him to the vet before shit happens. What are the other causes or symptoms that you monitor of bad stuff that could happen to my pets?
So our sort of thesis is, people should not need to be a data scientist to understand what you're trying to tell them through the data points. So step one is like, okay, let's extract this data and then explain that in a layman way, right? So that's step one, right? So that's first dimension. I think a lot of companies, wearables, both in the pet and human space, they fail at that first dimension. It's just a little bit tricky to understand the data, right? To that, the second dimension we've put in place is, would it not be very helpful if you could explain what this data actually means and what the user can do with the data, right? So how does it change their life, or rather their pet's life? And so so that's our second dimension. And the third dimension we've put in place is, how do we then connect, if we spot abnormalities and issues in the data, how do we then connect the caretaker to a service provider or a product that can fix this issue? And that's what we call our ecosystem model. So that's the MyPetGo ecosystem model. And so essentially, coming back to your question, as we spot, so we look at heart rate variability, pulse rate variability, respiration rate, temperature. So on the back of the monitor, we got a temperature gauge, which is just like a normal temperature sensor. And it will tell you whether the temperature is high or low, right? And you want to look out for things such as fever, obviously, but you want to look out more so for heat stroke if you're in a hot country, for instance, or if you're in a cold country, the other way around, right? Hyperthermia. And so that's what we call the four kind of health markers that we're looking at, right? But then we look at a lot of other things like behavior traits, itching, licking, scratching, resting, movement, mobility, and all these other things that are telling us, giving us some kind of indication of what's happening in the pet's life. And our philosophy is, if we spot an abnormality in the data, we sort of give you a push notification. And it can just be the fact that you come home after you've been out drinking Mezcal for a few hours with your mates. You come home, your dogs are super excited to see you coming home, right? So they run to the door, they get excited, and that might give an indication that, okay, HRV has gone up. But that push notification would say, look, we've just detected this. Don't be alarmed, just pay attention to it, right? Now, if that value will be sustained for, say, half an hour, or whatever the parameters we have there, depending on which type of value it is, we would then give you a second notification, which you can open up, and it can triage that data and tell you, this is now in the danger zone. Here are the reasons why this value could be elevated, and here are some solutions for you. That could be a solution to click and get instantly connected to a tele-vet, or to get or if you have a vet that you prefer, that you plugged in during setup of the application, you can speed dial your vet. Now, the health data can also be shared through a dynamic link directly to that vet on the other side, be it your personal vet, be it a tele-vet. And so they can triage that data and see what has happened over the last day or 24 hours or whatnot.
Love it, Richard. Quite bullish on your startup. Where can people find out more about you?
On the startup, they can go to mypetgo.com. And we're not overly social in that we're blasting a lot of things on social media. We probably should get better at that. But we've worked. 2023 was, let's say, the year of a pivot, right? And we worked very hard on this new anchoring into insurance and our take on vitality. So probably mypetgo.com is the best way to look at the venture. If you want to look at me, go to my LinkedIn, which is Richard Nilsson. Just you'll find me. Richard Nilsson, MyPetGo. You can put, and you'll find me.
Well, with two S's.
Two S's. That's right.